think that it's a straight line, right? You start Apple or you start Google or you start Facebook and it's just straight to the moon and you're just, something clicks and all of a sudden you're off to the races again. My family and I lived here in Lviv.
Do you remember the day?
I remember that moment. Knew that was just a historic day.
How do Americans feel about donating?
We all wanted to give. We want to help our friends in Ukraine.
Is how to find the idea for the business.
So I started the company when my wife, Sarah, was pregnant with our first child. Sarah called the doctor and her doctor didn't have time for her. And my father was one of the inventors of the touchscreen.
Wow.
And my mother, she was actually the first woman to start a tech company and grow it from nothing to an IPO. Steve Jobs. I'd be in my room and he came back and was like, "Hey, you like that game?" I was like, "Yeah, I love that game. You want to make your own?" "Yeah, I want to make my own." At the time, now looking back, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so amazing," because you can start your business even at the same time if you want to. And that's what I did.
Всім привіт! Сьогодні ми будемо спілкуватися з Енді Курцигом. Це людина, яка свого часу заснувала компанію, яка називається JustAnswer. І так само людина, яка з початку повномасштабного вторгнення дуже активно допомагає Україні та українцям. Let's start from the 24th of February 2022.
Yeah.
Do you remember the day?
I do, vividly. I remember that moment. I was having dinner with a friend of mine in San Francisco. And my phone started blowing up, just messages all over the place. And I had to leave the middle of dinner and go straight home and was listening to the news the whole way and calling all the exec team and coordinating with Nadia and trying to figure out what was going on and what we could do to help. Got home, watched the news with my family, Sarah and the 3 children, and knew that was just a historic day.
What did you feel that day?
That day I felt surprised because, while we were very well prepared, relatively speaking, and we knew that day might happen, of course we hoped it wouldn't, we didn't think it would. So actually having it happen was what felt surprising. I felt mad, for sure, angry, felt sad and worried.
I remember that interview. That was CNN, right? And you said that you are committed to Ukraine, and no matter what, you will stay in Ukraine and you will grow in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Be pro-democracy. We're not going to run away. We're not going to leave Ukraine.
And that was really a valuable thing to hear for Ukrainians, because one of the first things that everybody was afraid of, that companies from abroad, US-based companies, they will just quit all the offices and just quit their business here and quit the work relations with their employees. Mm-hmm. So why were you so confident in that?
Mm-hmm. I think, it's hard to be to imagine a situation at the time, but my family and I lived here in Lviv back in 2019. I feel like we've got a fairly good understanding of the country and the history and the culture and the people, and that just felt like the right thing to do. I'm sure many others that aren't as close and aren't as involved would sort of, just watch the news and get scared and worry and pull out of Ukraine, but that just never even crossed my mind. It was just, it's the right thing to do is to move forward, not backwards.
I'm just curious, how Americans feel about donations. Because in Ukraine, for us, it was obvious that we need to donate almost everything we have in that time to help our soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And but from the American point of view, so Americans are very far away, they're not in the war, but the news that we are donating and please help, please support. Mm-hmm. How do Americans feel about donating? Is that in a part of the culture, or people are trying to be very careful about that? How would you describe that?
I do think Americans are very generous with donations in general. giving to all kinds of charities, from healthcare, and my family gave to diabetes. Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, for example, is one of the causes that we've been very involved in, because my oldest daughter Jamie has type 1 diabetes. But many Americans are very charitable and giving. But when the war first started, I remember we all wanted to give. And it really was galvanizing, especially our staff, right, in the U.S. and the rest of the world, right? We want to help our friends in Ukraine. We're ready. We pulled out our wallet. We had our credit card number ready. We're going to go donate. And there were not very good options at that time. I remember most of the sites, if not all the sites that I found that were really like directly to Ukraine, it was enter your bank account information here, which is not something we do or trust in the U.S. You don't just give your bank account information to somebody. And so it's just like, really? I don't know. Some weird Ukrainian organization I don't know anything about. Am I going to give them my money and have them have access to maybe to my account? And so people were scared. That's just not how it's done in the U.S. It's more just credit card or PayPal or these other ways, and usually done through a charity, like a real, what we call a 501c3 charity in the U.S., which actually not only is the government sort of approves that it's a real charity and it does things properly, but it also allows the donors to get a tax deduction as well. So if I give $100 to a real 501c3 charity, I can actually deduct that from my income, and so pay a little bit less income tax.
Wow.
That's part of it. So we were looking for a place to do that, and none of the charities we found were both A, credible, and B, easy to donate to, except for I remember one, which was the Red Cross. And we were very serious about potentially making that our preferred charity of choice. And through conversations with Nadia and you and others at the time, decided that was maybe not the best path forward. And I think some of that has played out to be a good decision. And instead, my family and I decided to put together a 501c3. Actually, we didn't put it together because it takes a long time. Mm-hmm. My brother had one that he set up and did all the work for and gave to me. And so he just gave Arizae Foundation to me very soon after the war, and I had to switch all the accounts over and make it happen. But I remember lots of JAers across the world wanted to donate, and we were saying, hold on, just another week. Give me a week to get this all set up. And like, no, I want to donate now. And the extra week was I think a smart decision, because we were then able to set up the charity, have a web page. People could donate with a credit card, with PayPal, even internationally, and that's helped really get things started on the charity side.
Okay, let's move forward. Can you give us a little story behind JustAnswer?
Sure. How I started the company?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I started the company when my wife, Sarah, was pregnant with our first child, Jamie. And she was pregnant for the first time, and many of the moms will identify with this, but it's scary being pregnant for the first time, and weird changes in your body, and you're not sure if the baby's okay, and weird things happening. And Sarah called the doctor about something she was worried about, and we were worried about, and her doctor didn't have time for her. I'm too busy. I'll see you next week. What? Right? We want to know now. We're worried now. And so I had just sold my second company, and I thought, hey, I'll build a website where Sarah can talk to a doctor anytime she wants. And that's how it started. And of course, now, since then, we've grown from not just doctors to lawyers, mechanics, accountants, veterinarians, tech support, home improvement. We're in 196 countries, 700 categories, and 4 languages: English, German, Spanish, and Japanese. I think it's 36 currencies. Really proud of what we built so far.
How did it start? Like, okay, you had the idea, then you decided to hire people to find the investment, or you already had the finance?
Yep. So at the beginning, I had some money from the company I just sold, and I was looking for something new, and I had a bunch of ideas, and I started just playing with some of these different ideas. And I'm a coder, I'm a programmer as well, so I programmed up the first version of a JustAnswer site, and customers seemed to like it. Experts seemed to like it. It was $1 a question back then, one time, paid per question, but it seemed to work. And we didn't have doctors or lawyers. We just had sort of people that would do some research online for you and give you an answer online. But that's how it all started. And it was all self-funded. And it was just me bootstrapping along, doing the marketing, doing the coding, doing the customer service, doing everything until we got enough, doing the expert operations. All that was just me, but at a very small scale. And then as soon as we got big enough to be able to afford it, we hired our first employee, Maureen Kinanen, and she was a customer service, a moderator that helped with some of the customer service back then. And then we kept growing and growing. And as we were able to get bigger and bigger and make money, we could hire more and more people. And here we are now, all together, if you include, everybody in Manila and India and Ukraine and the United States, it's now about 1,200 people.
1,200?
1,200, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, Manila is more outsourcing customer service, so a lot of times we don't include that in the full number. But again, in terms of, what I did to stay motivated during that time, I'm very passionate about this business, so I'm self-motivated. So a lot of it's just, this is my baby. I'm going to grow this, and just keep going no matter what. But it was hard. I remember reading this book, and this book, I forget what it's called, but it had sort of, 200 pages or so, and on each page was a famous person and how they sort of went sort of into the dumps and were having a hard time and sort of gave up on themselves and were, miserable, and then came back and ended up stronger than ever. And every day I'd read one page, and that helped motivate me as well. Often the best times come right after the worst time, right? When it feels like the most bleak and the worst, and it's like it's never gonna work. You just keep going, just go back the next day and just keep trying and keep coming up with a different angle, and just, the next day, the next week, something clicks, and all of a sudden you're off to the races again.
What would, again, your advice how to find the idea for the business? Because there's like so many startups are every day they appear, and then the second day they're nobody remember their name.
Yeah.
And JustAnswer is like more than 10 years in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And more like
19.
How many years?
19 total. 19
years.
Yeah.
You're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how to find that idea for the business?
One of my observations over this time is that it's not as much about the idea as it is about the customer and what the customer wants. And something I'm really passionate about is obviously entrepreneurship. But to me, the most important part of entrepreneurship is being lean. So there's a book now that's come out called The Lean Startup. It came out in, I think, 2011, 8 years after we'd already been doing this lean startup. And so that's something I've been passionate about. It's got a name now, Lean Startup. But the basic idea of being focused on the customer. Everybody's, anybody that like works at JustAnswer or anybody that's reasonably smart has good ideas. The hard part is not always the good idea. It's finding ways to get it in front of customers and see if the customers really want that idea. And sometimes you just need a few tweaks, and you learn that from customers, and sometimes you need big changes. You learn that from customers, and sometimes it's just a bad idea. And the whole game with entrepreneurship is not necessarily about the best idea. It's about learning from the customer. What's the best idea? And constantly testing, learning to build and improve whatever the product is that you're building.
Getting back to entrepreneurship, what was your environment? Tell us more about your family. What was the environment where you grew up?
Mm-hmm.
Who were your parents? Maybe that also made an impact on you?
Yep. So my father was one of the inventors of the touchscreen. Your phone, your iPad, many devices these days, it's a touchscreen. My father was one of the inventors of the touchscreen. And he was a PhD at Stanford. He studied under a very famous guy named William Shockley, who was famously difficult to get a PhD from. I think my dad was the first to get a PhD from this guy because he just failed everybody. And my dad got one from him. And William Shockley is one of the inventors of the transistor, the chip. And so that's how my dad got started. He co-invented the touchscreen, and it was very simple back then. It was what you did was he had a piece of clear plastic, and then he added a thin layer of film onto that. That sort of when you pushed it,
there was a button, right?
No buttons.
Okay.
No, it was clear, and it was a thin film with liquid in there, and when you pushed it here, the liquid would spread out a little bit. It was clear liquid as well, and it would sort of push up a little bit here and push up a little bit here and push over a little bit here and push over a little bit here, and then it would know where you pushed, and you could sort of click and drop and drag and drop and do things like that. And he took this screen with a little computer in it, and it had a cable, and you plugged it into the mouse port on your computer. So you unplug the mouse, you plug this thing in, and then instead of using a mouse, you'd use a touchscreen.
Wow.
So first guy to really commercialize a touchscreen. And the interesting thing is, you'd think he would be, huge, right? Any guesses what, he tried to sell this all over the place, and you know what? Nobody really wanted it.
Not Microsoft or something like that.
There's no future in touchscreens.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's nothing here. This is a stupid idea. And the one application he found was in education, and especially special education. So children that didn't know how to use a keyboard and a computer and a mouse, it was easy for them to click. So they had this special, education software that they would sort of make work with this touchscreen, and they'd say, which one is the red square? Click. Good. Which one is the orange circle? Click. Good. And that was the application that they found back then to make it even work a little bit. And that company ended up buying my dad's company, and that was what he did. And so he, that was one parent in the house. And my mother started a software company. She was actually the first woman to start a tech company and grow it from nothing to an IPO ever. So she's often referred to as the mother of Silicon Valley, the first to sort of...
We heard about that.
That's
exciting.
Yeah, and so she built a very big company selling software to manufacturing companies. So, if you manufacture candy bars or desks or microphones, you need a software inventory management. Like today you've heard of maybe SAP and Oracle. Her company was the one that built those things before SAP and Oracle came along. And she built a big successful company, and it had an IPO, went public, kept growing and growing. They bought a big database company and were competing with Oracle, and then they got acquired by another big company. You were asking earlier about entrepreneurship. I think the lesson I've learned, not just from my parents, but from many of the entrepreneurs I've met in my life, and I've met a lot of tech entrepreneurs, is people think that it's a straight line, right? You start Apple or you start Google or you start Facebook, and it's just straight to the moon, and you're just, billionaire overnight, and it's so easy. And it never is, right? It's sort of around and backwards and forwards and left and right, and they say no, and you almost got a business, and then you do this, and it doesn't work, and that, and this works a little, and then it stops working. I mean, it's messy. And I think that's one of the lessons I've learned, and why perseverance is so important. A lot of people just give up at the first bad problem.
What kind of kid were you? Can you tell us?
I was kind of nerdy. I was kind of nerdy kid.
What were your favorite like subjects in the school?
Well, in grammar school, I liked math and science. But I really became passionate about business like when I was a kid too. So probably if you were to just pick one thing that I was like consistently passionate about throughout, it was business, even though there was no business classes in grammar school or even really high school. So the first thing I ever sold was I went to a party with my mother. Just the two of us went to this party, and I was probably less than 10. And Bob Noyce had this party, and he's one of the founders of Intel. And so this beautiful party, and it was amazing, and everybody eating and drinking and having a great time. And it was sort of it was like a lunchish mid-afternoon party. And then the party ended, and my mom says, "All right, time to go." I said, "Really? Everybody's leaving?" She's like, "Yeah, everybody's leaving." What are they gonna do with all those balloons? And so she asked if, I said, "Could I have them?" Yeah. How many do you want? It's like, as many as we can get. There were like a ton of them. And so we got as many as we could fit in the car. I said, "I want to go to the park." And so we went to the park, and I started selling these balloons to children at the park. So that was my first, but after that, I built a bike jump, like for mountain bikes and BMX bikes. I designed that with my dad, and we got very involved in that. Built another toy that was sort of this fun ride. That's sort of a platform on wheels with a rope, and the kid sits on this thing, and the parent swings you around, and you just go flying around, and that was fun. And we marketed that, and many businesses. I was always starting new businesses. I started a vending machine business in college, Coke machines, and beer machine as well. And what else? And then I started while I was a student at Cal. I started my first company, my first sort of real company.
Who else did you meet? Tell us.
Let's see. Bill Gates, Bill Hewlett, like Hewlett Packard. Let's see. Andy Grove, another famous Intel founder and the CEO there for a long time. Steve Jobs. In fact, my mother dated Steve Jobs for a while, and he's the one that got me excited about programming. So, I'd be in my room, like, kind of reading a book or whatever. And I just got an Apple II, and I was so excited playing games on this Apple II. And he came back and said, "Hey, you like that game?" I was like, "Yeah, I love that game. You want to make your own?" "Yeah, I want to make my own." And he started teaching me Pascal and coding languages back then and how to code.
How does it feel like knowing closely, for example, Steve Jobs, like a legend of tech world?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like that you're like close to the legend? I mean, I suppose they were like friends with your mother, right?
Yeah, they're friends with my mom. It felt like kind of normal life, right? It didn't
Not
feel
just
like
a dude that came.
some dude that's into programming. Yeah, and he was a nice guy and helped, super nice to me, and sort of felt normal at the time. Now looking back, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so amazing," because he's such a legend. But even at the time, he wasn't a legend, right? He's another good example of the story. It's not straight up and to the right. He got fired from Apple. Many people forget that, right? They thought, the board thought he was doing a terrible job, and they kicked him out, and he went off and started, what was it? I forget the name of the company, and then Apple finally bought it and brought him back, and then he of course turned Apple into what we know it today. But he was not a straight line either.
Let's move forward.
Okay.
College life.
Yeah.
University. Tell us, where did you go?
Yep.
Where did you study?
Yep. So I went to UC Berkeley as an engineer, specifically in industrial engineering. As industrial engineering operations research was the major at Cal, UC Berkeley. And I was all excited, went to Cal, and so happy to be there and doing engineering and partying and having fun and studying and having business ideas. And about 2 years in, the summer in between my second year and my third year, I was reading a book called Profiles of Genius. And it's got, I think, 11 or 13 sort of celebrity CEOs: Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, Fred Smith of Federal Express, etc. And I read this book and I loved it. And it's entrepreneurial stories, and it was motivating, and I was excited. And I went back and I said, you know what? Of these 13 amazing role models for me, I think 9 of them didn't graduate from college. Right? Steve Jobs didn't, Bill Gates didn't, right? Larry Ellison did.
So you decided to quit?
I did. Yeah, I did. I told my mom I'm quitting. I have this great idea. I don't even remember what the idea was now. And you can imagine what my mother thought of this idea. She hated it. Right? Not the business idea, just the idea of me quitting and dropping out of college. And so she over time convinced me that, okay, fine. And part of it was, I wanted to start this business, and engineering was like, the classes are hard at Cal. I mean, this is really intense, and it's very cutthroat and competitive. Especially all the basic classes, the first chemistry for engineers, physics for engineers, math for engineers. These are very difficult, challenging classes with very, very, very smart students. And at Cal, it's you'll fail out if you don't study really, really hard. And my mom convinced me that I should switch majors to something that came really natural to me, which was business. And she said, I don't even care if you go to class, as long as you get your degree. That's the condition. You switch majors to something easy for you, get your degree. You can start your business even at the same time if you want to. And that's what I did. So I started a company, I switched to business, which was easy for me, and graduated in a year and a half more. So it's a 4-year program.
What was the business?
Oh, the first business? So the first business was called Answer, interestingly enough, and it was software for the newspaper industry. And what we did specifically was we did deals with all the newspapers in a town in the Bay Area to start with, or many of the newspapers, and they would outsource their calendar section to us. And this is before the internet, but I saw the internet was this thing that was coming, and I thought it would be great. And so they would give us just huge bins full of mail they'd get from all these small businesses that had events, trying to promote their events in the calendar sections of the newspaper. And they would spend all this time going through the mail and picking some and putting it together in a special newspaper ready format. And it took them a lot of time, and they had a staff of people that were trying to do that. And I went in and I said, hey, I'll do that. The whole thing. I'll do it for free. The only condition is I want to sell ads in it, like classified ad. I want to turn it into like a classified ad revenue instead of just sort of free listings for everything. And that's what I did. So,
how did you get to that idea?
I don't even know how I got that idea. But like I said, I saw the internet coming, and I knew that that would be powerful to have a database of information. Content like this would be very valuable to have it in an organized fashion. And so I was like, how am I going to get all this data? And I didn't have it. There was no internet back then. I could crawl the web or something. I had to go get it. And so I came up with this idea to go do deals with the newspapers. And they just gave it to me for free, essentially, all this content. And then I also had ad revenue coming in. But that was sort of the business at the time. But the real business was building this database so I could then put it online and build an online company of all the events.
And it happened.
Some of it happened, and then I sold it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the name also?
I sold that, and then I started very soon after a new company called eBenefits. And that was essentially sort of PeopleSoft, Zenefits, sort of some things you've heard of maybe nowadays. It actually started more on the insurance side, but it evolved into more like HR system, web-based, cloud-based HR system. And
you sold it.
I sold that as well.
What happened after that?
Yeah, and then I started JustAnswer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where we were.
Yeah.
How did you meet your wife?
I met Sarah on just a random Tuesday night in San Francisco.
While you were a student?
No, this is I was, I think 28 or something when I met Sarah. And I was at the gym working out, and a buddy of mine was like, "Oh, let's go have a beer and a burrito at this place called Shanghai Kelly's." And so I was like, "Oh yeah, great, good idea." And so my friend Mark brought his girlfriend Liz, and I brought a girl that I had been on a couple dates with, and Liz brought this guy Wayne and this girl Sarah to try to introduce them on a blind date. So it was going to be the I guess the six of us. But I didn't know they were even, any of these other people were coming. I just thought my friend Mark was coming, maybe with his girlfriend. And so we were there at this bar, Shanghai Kelly's, and I was talking with the girl that I was with, and we were actually having an argument. Bill Clinton was president at the time, and we were having an argument about Bill Clinton. And the argument kept getting sort of hotter and hotter, and right at the sort of climax of this argument, the most sort of hot red, time in this argument, somebody came in the door, and I shouldn't have looked in that moment, because when you're having an argument, you don't in that moment you just don't look. But I looked, and the girl I was arguing with said, "Well, I bet she agrees with you," and she stormed off. And Sarah agreed with me. So
she said yes.
She said yes. So we ended up talking about Bill Clinton and whatever else, and we had a great conversation, and the rest is history. And remember the name of that bar, Shanghai Kelly's. My middle daughter is named after that bar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's the location?
It's in San Francisco, right on Polk and Broadway.
We will put the picture of it.
Yeah.
It is still working, right?
Still there, yeah. It's this tiny little dive Irish bar. It's been there forever. And, many years on our anniversary of meeting, we'll go in and have a drink.
Well, tell us more about your wife.
Yeah.
What is she like?
Yeah.
Like, what do you like about her?
Yeah. So I love Sarah because she is, well, first of all, she's smart. She's really funny and a great sense of humor. And she is a really active participant in our community. And, we call that get things done. But, she really cares about making a big difference in the world, both through our children, and she's an amazing mother to our kids, but also, passionate about making the world a better place. So she's been a really amazing partner with everything we've been doing with Arizae and for Ukraine, organizing many of the fundraisers that we put on, concerts and movie showings and all kinds of amazing things that she's put together. And that's how she's always been. Before the war in Ukraine, she was very involved in the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation and raising money to find a cure for type 1 diabetes. And that's part of who she is, and that's part of who we are as a couple is really focus on making an impact in the world and making a difference.
Just to make sure, what is her profession or?
Mm-hmm. So she, right out of college. So interesting fact about her: she was an ice skater growing up, and a very good ice skater. In fact, she almost made the U.S. Olympic ice skating team, and she was number 5 or 6 in the country, and the top 3 went to the Olympics. But very good ice skater. She went to college, and then right out of college, she was an investment banker at Robertson Stevens Investment Bank, and then was in sort of related fields after that.
Well,
yeah.
And you have 3 kids.
3 kids.
The elder daughter is already in college.
Yes.
So she will be like you, entrepreneur.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. I think she's on the track. So she's a first year student at Stanford, and she's passionate. She's the one that has type 1 diabetes and these different devices on her. And her passion is finding, improving those devices. So her major is biomechanical engineering. So sort of medical devices, essentially, and just making these devices that she wears all the time better, smaller, cheaper, more accessible to everyone is her passion. So that's what she's off to. My middle daughter is very entrepreneurial. She's always starting a new business, and right now she's starting a cookie subscription business. So you can pay a monthly subscription to get a box of cookies every month from her. And my son.
That's definitely from you, right?
Yeah, I'm the CFO, she says. So she's hired me.
Subscribing model, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, she's smart. And then my son is very sporty and loves math, and he's 12. Kelly's 14, and Jamie's 18.
Well,
yeah.
What kind of values are you trying to transfer?
Yeah.
Them.
It's funny. My Sarah and I had a conversation about this when she was pregnant. Like, what kind of kid do we want? Do we want like a sporty kid, or do what?
Or nerdy one, maybe.
We wanted a nerd. That's right. Yeah, we decided we really want a nerd. That's the best. And so, we're through luck or whatever, we got, Jamie is a nerd. I think she'd be the first one to tell you she's a nerd, and she's very smart, and she's an amazing kid, and she's a nerd.
Your advice for parents, how to raise your children?
How to raise a nerd?
Yeah.
No, how to raise children. Boy.
I mean, it looks like you give them so much freedom from my side, but maybe it's just.
I don't know about that. I think so. I think freedom shifts over time. So I think when they're very small, they need a lot of structure. They need to be taught everything. Like, no, do it like this. Step 1, step 2, sort of very involved and very clear and very like straightforward and very directive about how to do things. And as they get older, they figure out all those things and are doing those things on their own, but there's always some new challenge or new thing, and you got to help them with those things. But as they get older and older, more and more independence. So that's been a big step for our family, to have Jamie go off to college and get sort of almost the ultimate independence. She's not living at home. She lives on campus, and she does whatever she wants to do. She'll get whatever grades she gets, and she'll pursue whatever subjects she wants. And as much as sometimes we want to like have her do it a different way or have it do it our way, right? She's now learned so much growing up, and now it's on her. So I think that independence grows from almost 0 to nearly 100%.
So like freedom and independence, that is one of the values, right?
Mm-hmm. Over time, right? So it shifts over time.
What else?
So we've got some family rules that I think are interesting. In our family, we keep each other safe. In our family, we keep each other's feelings safe. In our family, we use things as they're meant to be used. And in our family, we do as our grown-ups ask until we're at that stage where they can get that independence. So those are the 4 family rules we've had since the beginning. And we have them up on the wall. And whenever the kids do something wrong, it's like, which rule did you break? Mm-hmm. Yes, you hurt your sister's feelings.
It's not possible, like when you are like a teenager, just to listen to your parents and do as they say. Come on.
That's right. So it's harder, right? As you get older, some of these things become trickier. But it's also on us to have fair rules, right? If we sort of try to micromanage them when they're a teenager, right, then they're going to be breaking the rules all the time, and that's not good either. And so it's about trying to give them the right amount of flexibility, but then having a clear line where the rules still need to be met.
Okay, thank you for the conversation. The last question would be, of course, about Ukraine. Why Ukraine should win?
Ukraine should win because democracy's proven to be a better system, and that independence and economic opportunity leads to new improvements in the world. Everything from new medical devices to new creative arts and books and paintings and all that is needs to be free, and Ukrainians deserve to be free. Ukrainians are smart, brave, talented, funny, interesting people that deserve to be free.
Thank you. And what would be your message for all Ukrainians right now?
Stay strong, persevere, just like I said about a startup. Just when it feels like the worst, usually right after that is when it's the best. And let's get ready for that giant party we're going to have after Ukraine wins.
Thank you.
Of course.